Hello, everyone, and welcome back. It has been a while. If you follow the show chronologically, in other words, listen to episodes as they come out, you'll know it has been a hot minute. Our last episode on Strange Days debuted on December 26, 2021. It is now January 1st, 2023. But what can I say? There's been a lot of projects going on in the background, a lot of good stuff that we hope comes out over the next year. And of course, Nathan has been hard at work on his YouTube channel, Cinecraze. If you get a chance to check that out, please do. Lots of good stuff there. Links to all of that good stuff are available on the About Us section of the website. Just look at the profile pictures and follow the links to your heart's content. Anyway, it is the Smooth Thrills Radio Hour, and we have a very exciting episode lined up for you here. We're talking about a magnum opus. We're talking about a classic from the late 20th century, the Golan and Globus epic musical, The Apple. Nathan and Katie are here, and it's about time to get started. But first, we're starting already?
Get up and get ready for BIM Hour.
10 seconds to BIM Hour.
All right, everybody, strap in.
The National Fitness Program is watching you.
5,
4,
3,
2, BIM.
She was not brought into the fold like it was in the movie.
I wonder why they went for that.
I don't really know.
Well, probably because people want more finite answers. They don't want to have to look for it
Finality.
themselves.
Could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That could be.
And then the remake isn't truly a remake of the movie
Oh, no,
either.
no.
And that's the other thing, too, is that I didn't realize it until I watched the featurette. Like, Jan de Bont was saying how they never actually got the rights for the longest time. And this is already a Go picture in pre-production.
Oh, shit.
So they couldn't remake the movie, per se. And they could only adapt the book so far. Something, like something fell through. That's why it's a different movie.
And, yeah.
It really is.
But sometimes I like
Okay.
that with remakes, quote unquote, because then you have that, it's its own thing instead of being, the exact same thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but it also kind of feels pointless, too.
No, I get it.
After I've watched it, I'm just like,
Yeah.
you didn't bring
Sort of
anything
a-
new to the table, really.
Right.
You just
Kind
kind
of
of
a
took like
remake
another
and-
route.
But that's
Yeah.
what I like
Remake
about,
and title only.
like with
kind of a
what
thing.
Mike Flanagan is doing with Shirley Jackson's work, and I can't remember the other person, but he's taking enough from the story
Shirley Hemphill.
to give it homage, but also still making it his own. Who the hell is that?
Oh my God, Katie.
I'm sorry. It's been
What's
9
happening now?
It's-
Oh my God,
So-
like right now.
like we're recording a podcast.
Okay.
Sure. Speaking of that, we should probably get around to actually doing that kind of a thing.
Yeah, it's enough
Let's
preamble.
get to it, shall we? That's
Enough
enough
foreplay.
preamble. Let's get on.
It's been
to
a
my
while. We had to
rambling-
get the motor and
my
the
rambling
oil
intro,
and all
yes.
that fun stuff going.
Get the lube properly.
Okay, you took
Ah,
it.
yeah. Hey,
I'm ready for this intro. Let's hear it.
we're ready. So, by 1979, after years of success, the Cannon Film Group was in very deep trouble. The dynamic duo at the top had sadly lost their way, and a string of box office failures and some changes to various tax laws left the once proud company demoralized and on the verge of collapse. Enter the Ninjas. Golan and Globus bought Cannon for a mere $500,000 and immediately embarked on a campaign of, let's just call it batshit lunacy. Before any of that could happen, though, the new Cannon felt like they had to make an undeniably big splash on the American film market to prove the power of the new company, to wow American filmgoers, and of course, win an Oscar. Their big idea for doing all of that was absolutely killer. We're going to produce a musical based in a dying genre, performed by a cast no one in the US had ever heard of before, and debut it at a Canadian film festival. What could possibly go wrong? Well, let's find out, everyone. Enter a world of vampires, obscene glitter usage, strange music, stranger mixed drinks, hippies, and gold luxury cars. It's a lot to take in, folks. So, dear listeners, bring us your master's special hors d'oeuvre. Bring us your magic apples, your mystery apples, your horny apples. Take a little ride, let us be your guide through this apple paradise, and we'll try to make sense of it all before Mr. Tops comes and takes us all away. It is the Smooth Thrills Radio Hour, everyone, talking about the apple. Where do we begin with something like this?
Dumpling
Now,
gang.
Tim Conway, everyone. Let's start with Tim. No.
He
So
passed.
I had maybe seen this once. I know, Nathan, you'd seen this before. Katie, I think this may have been the first time you've ever seen this movie before in your life.
First time seen and heard of it.
Well,
She had the volume
What are you thinking?
I liked it.
Where was your mind after you saw this particular film?
Wow.
I'm gonna
I
be
was just
honest.
imagining
What?
Katie watching this going, what the fuck? Okay.
What is
I want to
what
hear
does
it.
that
I'm
mean?
glad you liked it. No,
I
I mean,
did
it's
like
just because
it.
it is. It's total what the fuckery, this
I don't
movie.
know. Like, as somebody who grew up watching a lot of musicals, and I mean, my sister has always been in theater, watching musicals, going to Broadways, and even in college, she studied musicals and all. I don't understand why I've never heard of this movie, like even in passing, because there is so much in it. Like, because me and my roommate were watching it together, and she's like, you can clearly see there's no way that some of the visuals in this did not influence Rocky Horror Picture Show.
No, they didn't. That
How?
was 5 years
No.
previous.
Well, never mind. I meant it the other way around. I feel dumb now. But there's
Oh,
also
no.
stuff
You're right.
in this.
It's definitely in that. Yeah, we'll get into
I'm
all
curious
the other
too.
films that it's taking from. Yeah.
Because there is
No,
stuff
we're gonna
in this
we're gonna cover a
too
couple of those points. Yeah.
that I feel probably went on to there's one scene in particular in the Broadway Rent that I feel this movie influenced.
Okay.
And I'm just curious
be.
because like there is a lot of visuals in it that you can tell definitely had to impact other things.
As far as the visuals go, what really struck me about it is this has something in common with a lot of stuff that was produced in the late 70s that had a vision of the future, whether it was this movie or the TV show Buck Rogers that came out about that time, I think. Really,
78,
their
yeah.
vision of the future was always, it's going to be just like the late 70s, only way more. You think people wear glitter now? Holy shit, wait till 1994.
Well, it was also disco-esque. Like, they just thought
Yes.
disco was going to continue also.
I wish
And
it had.
progress and get even more extreme as time went on.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Did they nail 1994? I didn't see.
I
don't know.
wasn't that old
don't-
to know if it did.
It didn't. Trust me on this one. They missed it.
And it's
They
watching
missed it pretty
this,
hard.
it's hard to imagine just 5 years previous that Catherine Mary Stewart was spending a weekend in the Hamptons, you know?
With Bernie?
Yeah. So it's just a little, yeah. That's my thing with futuristic
Yeah.
or science fiction.
Mhm.
When you put a date on it, that's like the death knell. Like, and you're only going, because they made it in 1979, you're only going 15 years into the future. Come on.
Yeah.
Like, you know, whether it's Space 1999 or 2001,
Mm-hmm.
why put a date on it?
Yeah, because they
Just
really could have just
let it
left it
ride.
open.
Right. And not that anyone's expecting this to come to fruition at all, but
Well,
why,
then again,
you know, encapsulate that and just
Well,
say
I have
it
a
comes to this
question.
point.
So watching it, there is a little bit of, and I found this peculiar in it, of the whole like Big Brother's watching 1984 stuff. Could they have
Yeah.
chose 94 as like an allude to 84?
That's an interesting perspective.
I can't
didn't
think of any
about
other
that, because
reason.
it
I
is
mean, it
very
seems
Big
completely
Brother.
arbitrary.
Mm-hmm. When they were
Yeah.
all doing the BIM workout thing
The
together.
BIM hour.
Yeah.
It's almost 4 p.m.
And then the house is burning
Time to
down and the
stop
guy's
putting out- yeah.
operation stopped.
And it's a good thing the fire workers and all that, they had already had choreographed these routines.
They got the
You know.
they got the chest cracked open, ready to do surgery, but
And he was
you know,
dancing along too. Like it was.
He has to. He
It can
knows,
wait.
Yeah. Yeah, knocking on death's door, but I got to do some moves.
I can't think of any other particular reason to pick 1994. Really, it seems arbitrary. So
No, I think
I don't know.
Katie nailed it though. I think it really is that simple. I think it's Menachem Golan going, 10 years later, you know?
Well, because 84 definitely wasn't far enough in the future to
Right.
have been any source of impactful.
Well, no, of course not. I mean, remember, they were convinced that this movie was going to win an Oscar and be around for years.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of wish it had been. Maybe not the Oscar, but at least been more notable.
And this thing debuted at the Montreal Film, I think it was Montreal Film Festival. It wasn't Toronto. They had vinyl albums made up of the soundtrack to give out to everybody at the screening, which if you can find one, must be worth a fortune because most of them were thrown at the screen and destroyed during the screening.
Which
of
is
the
really
movie.
interesting because of what happened in the beginning of the film.
Yeah. And as the story goes, that Golan was so
Distraught.
struck by this negative reaction that he wanted to jump off the balcony of his hotel room and had to be talked out of it. They had so much riding on this movie as their vehicle to the big time. So
Yeah.
they certainly thought this movie was going to be around for a very long time. Maybe 1994 was just on the periphery of that expectation of longevity. I don't know.
Well, 1980 was a great year for musicals, but it was also a horrible year for musicals.
Yeah.
Because the other two
That's something-
that I think of are Can't Stop the Music and Xanadu,
Right.
both which suffered the same type of fate at the box office
This
as
is true.
did.
And this goes back to the question of the time, like Katie brought up, I think, about the timing of the movie. You know, Can't Stop the Music came out just before this and cratered. Xanadu, same thing, really. Was the Apple released a couple of years too late? Maybe, but maybe not. I'm thinking, if this movie was released theoretically when it was supposed to have been released, it would have fallen into this whole mix of very popular movies that were just like it, and it would never have stood out. It would have been like,
Almost a damned if you do,
yeah,
damned if you
okay,
don't.
this thing is
Mhm.
also, it would have ended up as the fourth movie down on your movies you might like because you watched this kind of a thing. It would have disappeared. Instead, it came out of nowhere and got noticed that way. I mean, it didn't get a huge release by any means. I think it was had one screening in Chicago and then disappeared and had a second life on home video.
And all of those sequels didn't have the benefit of previous source material in terms of the success of Grease or maybe Hair
Yeah.
immediately before that.
Yeah. Well, those movies also, whether it was Xanadu or Thank God It's Friday or something like it, they all had a known quantity to anchor it down. They had an Olivia Newton-John or Donna Summer or John Travolta.
Mhm.
This movie had nobody that you'd heard of before in your life.
Joss
And
Ackland,
if you were
Miriam Margolyes, come on.
The average
I
person.
don't think they were not putting Miriam Margolyes front and center on the poster of this movie, Nathan.
Well, damn it, they should have. It could have been like Alfie and his alive mother. I don't know. Well, you know what? We'll get into the whole Catherine Mary Stewart thing,
Sure.
but it's an awesome breakout role for her, I think, and the way she got it is amazing to me.
I like stories
But also,
like that.
Finola Hughes, this was her first film.
Finola Hughes, yeah, if you watch carefully, she is at least 4 different characters in this movie at any given time. She shows up as a reporter, a background dancer, I think in 2 other places.
Yeah, because this
would have been before Staying Alive.
Yes, it was. Well, she also did the movie called The Nutcracker. It was with Joan Collins the year before Staying Alive.
Oh, Christ.
But it wasn't your typical, it wasn't an adaptation of The Nutcracker. It was different. It's a good movie. It's a fun little movie. If you like
to see
it's
adaptation
in the
of
vein
Nutcracker
of
with Joan
Staying
Collins.
Alive. But it's about dance. And if you're, or a chorus line or something like that. I had a huge crush on Finola Hughes. Holy shit. Staying Alive, both her and Cynthia Rhodes. I'm like, oh my God, but it's another podcast.
True. So the release of this really turned it into one of those undiscovered gems instead of just getting buried under everything else that was going on in disco movies, because there were a ton of them.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, too, is it was dying at that point.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Just to make it clear, at the time that this movie was released to theaters, also in theaters at the time, you had Shogun Assassin, Raging Bull, Flash Gordon, Popeye, Any Which Way You Can, sequel to Any Which Way But Loose, of course, 9 to 5, The Elephant Man, Private Benjamin, Fade to Black, Motel Hell, and Disney's re-release of Song of the South of all things. So not only, I mean, this movie wasn't like anything else in theaters, but nothing in theaters was like anything else in theaters either.
That's true.
Really. So
it was what, October or September when they released this?
It kind of depends on who you ask as to, I think the official release date was like November 21st or something, but you know, one screening in one theater, you missed it kind of a thing. It's released whenever you say it was, I guess.
And it was on home video through Paragon Video Productions that Canon had to deal with, but it went out of print quickly. And I think even by like 1985, it was already out of print.
Wow.
So when that MGM DVD came along, almost 20 years later, it'd been gone for that long. I never actually got to see it back in the day. That was always like, you remember the video rental days. You were dependent on what titles they had, especially back catalog titles like that. Company like Paragon was long gone by that stage, so MGM ended up getting a lot of the Canon catalog, but they didn't feel the need to put that out on home video, especially like VHS
Can't imagine why.
or Laserdisc, but they did do the DVD.
Is it still hard to find now? Like physically?
No.
Okay.
No, there's a Blu-ray release.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's
That's
a great
weird.
Blu-ray. Yeah.
I bet it's beautiful though.
Well, yeah, but just the presentation, like they have a really great interview with Catherine Mary Stewart, and she also does the commentary. That's really all you need. I mean, she covers all the bases on it. Yeah.
Yeah, the interview and the commentary cover a lot of the same ground, but yeah, you get a lot of interesting information out of there. Because it was her first movie, she had no idea that anything about it was out of the ordinary or strange, or
which is almost,
you know, she just thought, this is the way movies are made.
Which is very on par for what the story is telling.
Right, it's her character.
True.
Yeah.
That's true. She plays BB, half of the
BB
call
Bash.
them a folk music, half of the folk music duo with her friend Alfie, who
boyfriend
spends most of the movie crying and unable to walk or have much hand-eye coordination, kind of stumbling into walls, and basically he's kind of a load. And if this was an MST3K movie, we would be referring to him as the load for this whole thing.
And throughout, I kept waiting for her to burst into song and sing "What's It All About, Alfie?" In terms of this movie, what am I doing here? You know, what's going on here? But
what the hell's happening to me?
Yeah.
As far as I can tell, this was George Gilmore's only film credit.
I think so.
Was this movie. The guy who played Alfie, sorry. Of course, Catherine Mary Stewart went on to many other things. Last Starfighter, Night of the Comet, Weekend at Bernie's.
Dudes.
Death Wish 2. Was it Death Wish 2? Or
no.
What was it? She got blown up. She was in like, if Dick Clark had been allowed to continue the way he was continuing, maybe he would have become something like Mr. Boogaloo. It's hard to say.
Predatory?
Well, sort of. I mean, what happened was in right about 1960, a company called ASCAP, which you probably heard of, it's a music licensing company. They were getting a lot of competition from BMI, another music licensing company that just charged less. And they were suing BMI for being a monopoly. They said they're taking over the market, it's unfair. And they took their case to Congress and put it before the same congressional committee that had just overseen the quiz show scandal. Probably seen this portrayed in the movie Quiz Show. I think that trial took place in 57, 58, somewhere in there, if I remember right. But that was also ABC, which was carrying American Bandstand. And the ABC brass were pretty nervous about this because they're thinking, if they go after anybody here, it's going to be Dick Clark. He is the most visible target out there. So we have to make sure our house is in order here or something bad's going to happen. We will not survive another scandal like this. Unfortunately, what they found out, Clark, who is at that point the most famous DJ in America, whenever he held up that 45 and said, this is the next record that's going to sweep the nation, he not only owned a piece of the music publishing company that was putting out the record, he owned a piece of the label that was putting out the record, he owned a piece of the manufacturing plant that was pressing the vinyl to make the record that he was holding up in front of him.
So he was just benefiting from it on all angles.
and ABC said, you divest yourself of all of this or we're killing this show.
Shit.
So he had to sell everything off. He was left with Bandstand, and that was it. Now, granted, he did fairly well for himself otherwise.
Well, he went
But
into
imagine
movie
if-
producing as well around
Sure.
that time. Maybe to compensate for that? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. But imagine if he had been left in control of all that. What could possibly have happened? He might have become Mr. Boogaloo. Maybe Mr. Boogaloo was based on him. I don't know. I mean, American Bandstand was on its way out by the time this movie came around, but certainly something like Solid Gold was still around and doing
Yeah,
fairly
Soul
well.
Train was huge.
Those were both nationwide shows. And when Soul Train, I think, was based out of, not Philadelphia, it was based out of Chicago, I think. Don't recall.
Don Cornelius.
But I don't know. Maybe that's the case, maybe not. I don't know if anybody thinks Mr. Boogaloo is based on a real character or not. You could base him on anything, really.
Yeah, it might be. It might be. But that also could be giving the movie a little bit too much credit. But if
That could be
if it was that if it was that well known, then it could have been an obvious grab for sure.
I don't know. Like I say, I mean, the whole scandal with Dick Clark was certainly well known, but that would have been many years, 20 years before this movie was even made. So I don't know if there's any connection or not.
Well, and all these movies, in a way, they're A Star Is Born cautionary tales always.
Mhm.
So
Sure.
there's going to be, you have the naive ingenue, and you're going to have
Mhm.
the corporate taking over, controlling their life, making them the product that they want, and that's it, So you're never going to have a wonderful storyline. So I think that's a timeless approach more
Well,
than anything. But
Is the apple a cautionary tale?
yeah, I think so.
I think it's meant to be
Was
perceived as that.
I
Yeah,
mean, it's meant
because
to be, but was
they regress.
BB's life really that bad?
No, but she became exploited.
Yeah.
Got a, tasted the apple, so to speak, and
Yeah.
regressed and joined Joss Ackland and his Happy People Parade of Godspell-esque folks.
That to me is the laugh out loud every single time I see it part of the movie where
It definitely takes
he
a turn.
introduces Alfie. So
Yeah,
these
it's-
are ejects from the 60s. Hippies.
I think it was
Right,
really
and if-
like
Moon glow, pajama boy, get this boy some breakfast.
I
You know,
took
whatever
that
it is.
part that if it had come out now, it would have definitely, and possibly back then, it would have been a commentary on the treatment of the homeless and things like that. That is
Sure.
how I perceived that.
I just felt like that this movie, not that it probably would have been a hit at any time, but it missed its mark by about 7 years, because 73 was the year of Godspell in theaters and also
Mhm.
Jesus Christ Superstar. So that's what I
Yeah.
equate more than Xanadu, which it has definite similarities to by coincidence. It's just of
Yeah.
that ilk,
Mhm.
but it takes it back to the Godspell. They don't
Yeah.
have any great musical numbers like Day by Day or
Day by day.
as Alan Shimper would say. Yes. Day by day.
But no, the moment he introduces the hippies and when he brings BB into the cave and says, "Oh yes, Alfie's in the bachelor quarters." The cave has a bachelor quarters.
And then they
of
spend a
course.
year there and somehow have a 3-year-old child.
Yeah.
Yes.
Super hormonal growth or something in the
fantastic.
future.
It's
perhaps.
those hippie
that is
hormones.
really
Maybe.
you can really tell that is the moment the wheels truly finally come off of this movie, because they had no idea how to handle the last 15 minutes of this thing.
Off the Rolls Royce,
No
Or
idea.
just-
Yes.
which sadly did not include Lino Ramay, by the way, I have to say.
No, it didn't. No. But you can tell it's like, okay, what do we do now? What happens? Okay.
And
It's
then you
fantastic. It's fantastic the way it came out because it's so preposterously weird.
got, right, nothing really makes sense. You're just like, okay, all right. So yeah.
But it does drive home my second take on this movie, which is that The Apple is a deeply conservative film. It is made from a conservative viewpoint, just like Logan's Run.
Oh, it definitely
was
has
as well.
Logan's Run vibes.
Oh,
going
big time.
throughout. Just the crowd when they're doing the talent show at the beginning just reminds me of
I still need
the
to see
renewal
Logan's Run.
ceremony almost.
Oh, the crowd at the beginning looks exactly like the crowd that showed up for American Idol auditions when I was a production assistant. It was exactly the same vibe.
It made me think of Eurovision.
Eurovision as well, yeah. But you know what I mean? It's like when I mentioned was BB's life that bad, it is from that viewpoint. It is from that conservative viewpoint, is that, okay, just like in Logan's Run, this dystopia involves people kind of having a generally pretty good time,
Mm-hmm.
doing a lot of drugs and drinking and sleeping around. And then it comes down to the moral of the story, and you have, we gave birth to a 3-year-old in a cave. The family
Knowledge is bad. Don't learn, because then you
Exactly.
get taken advantage
the
of.
family
Yeah.
unit is restored. Now we can all leave to a better life, kind of a
Mhm.
thing. I really thought that was going to be more controversial, but I guess you guys picked up on that as well. It's
I looked at Michaela and said the exact same thing,
Mm.
that I hate that the fact of the moral of this story is when you gain knowledge, you are then bad.
Mm.
For her to be good again, she has to return to basically like her innocent life
naivete, yeah.
of,
or specifically Alfie.
But that's also the corruptibility that they have when they take somebody who is naive. So you wouldn't have a story if she weren't, you know.
Right. But I also like how you had Alfie, who would make a song, but people didn't like it because it wasn't what they wanted by today's
He's such an
standards.
emo
But he
kid.
also
He really was an emo
refused
kid.
to conform.
Such a
But I like
whiner.
the idea that he
But he was the emo
wouldn't
Phillips
conform.
type, though. Let's be honest. Sorry, go ahead, Kate.
I mean, I said it. I like the fact that he wouldn't conform to what that he
Right.
wanted them to be.
Yeah, from
Or
the
what
very
they wanted
beginning,
him to be.
he never saw he was never infatuated with celebrity as she became.
I do kind of hate of course, the woman is going to be the one who's railroaded and not the man. He's smart enough to know to not let them take advantage of him.
But Grace
Smart
Kennedy
enough?
tries. She definitely tries to sway him.
Oh, definitely.
I didn't think of Alfie as being a particularly smart guy. in this
Well,
film.
how else does he
In
get
the
all those
scheme
women?
of what this movie's
Well, that's
trying to
different
portray.
Never mind, I keep going
Different
back to
Alfie.
that.
Different Alfie.
Alfie darling, sorry. But again, like Jason's saying, I don't feel bad for him throughout the movie. Like he's drawn very annoying.
He is.
Like he's not like I don't care if she goes back to him or not.
He spends half the movie crying and leaning up against a wall. And it's just like, come on, dude.
You know what I started to do it and I didn't follow through, but I wanted to time the intervals between musical numbers. Very small time in between as far as like dialogue scenes. And that's just from them saying a few words to the music beginning. Yeah. Right. And it's literally like with 30 seconds to a minute in between almost throughout the movie. Maybe it's
pretty jammed up.
Yeah. Maybe the scenes with Miriam Margolyes and Alfie go on a little bit longer, but that's about it.
That's true.
I mean, the whole movie's told in song. It's kind of odd. It's almost wall-to-wall music throughout. So maybe that was a turnoff.
I definitely didn't realize it was a musical. That's why I'm shocked I hadn't heard of it.
She also got a copy of the shooting script, which had musical notes over all the dialogue. So that, and it kept saying in parentheses, to the tune of, you know.
I would love to see the shooting script for this movie, actually. Or any script at all.
They probably scrapped, you know what I mean? Like, this movie's, 88 minutes? There was a rumored print that circulated when MGM...
Oh, that's right.
MGM has a knack for, they acquire these companies and their libraries, but they'll, like they did with Swamp Thing, they accidentally put out the European version of Swamp Thing, which has the Adrienne Barbeau nude scenes, whereas the movie was PG in the US. So yeah, there was a whole prologue, evidently. There was alternate musical numbers.
At least one.
Yeah, so there's
there, or maybe two?
Well, there's a couple that go a little bit longer, evidently, because the soundtrack album, the songs or the versions on the soundtrack album differ from the way they are in the film, which isn't all that uncommon. No, you know, you'll get like a single version versus the verbatim version in the film, but evidently there's a couple different numbers on there that differ a bit. The movie feels way too ambitious to be 88 minutes long anyway. Like there's so many things going on, like idea-wise in this thing. Like I can at least see it going for another 20 minutes. Usually with Menachem Golan, he's going to have this grand auteur vision, whether it's a great one or not. and he's going to insist on having all of this.
Mm.
And I think a lot of it just fell by the wayside, perhaps. I don't know.
Wasn't that what affected the ending, though? Is they wanted something they couldn't achieve and kept trying to do it, and at the last minute thought, okay, we can make floating gold car sky go.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like, let's wrap this up. Yeah, some kind of way.
Yeah.
And they cut a lot of musical numbers, too, that were initially introduced, and they just never shot them. And I've got a list of those right here, if you'd like to hear it.
Oh, shit. Okay. Oh, okay.
Um,
I'm sure this is totally real. Nothing about
Boogaloo
this is made up.
Wonderland. Bim There, Done That. Hellbent for Leather Bears.
Stop. No, that's not a thing.
Futuristic Bubble Pram.
No. This is
And
bad.
Stranded at the Bimburger Shack.
No, that's not a real thing. No.
I have this on good authority. So,
Do you?
yeah.
I like Bim There, Done That.
You don't like Hellbent for Leather Bears? I particularly thought that one was good.
I just see you like abruptly waking up in the middle of the night and being like, oh my god, I have to write that one down.
Yeah.
By the
but
way,
anyway, those are all true.
in both the commentary and interviews on the Blu-ray, Catherine Mary Stewart claims repeatedly that she did not know what the songs Speed and I'm Coming were about until she saw them in the context of the film. Are we buying that?
I guess so. I mean, think about it.
Always a
She's so
possibility.
overwhelmed by everything in this production. I don't think she has time to focus and look at the subliminal messaging, or not even subliminal. I mean, it's right there. It's
Subliminal
overt.
messaging.
But for her, it was subliminal, I guess. I don't know.
What
but
to you was subliminal about I'm Coming?
I don't know. It felt like a disco interlude out of Caligula,
That's the scene in particular that I feel influenced a scene in the Broadway Rent.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh, was it that one? Okay.
Ah.
Because there's like that weird, obviously it's supposed to be a sex scene without being, graphic. And there's a scene in the Broadway Rent where they are clearly sleeping together, but they're keeping it not graphic.
Okay.
So it just made me think of that. And then, of course, the scene with Frankenfurter and Janet and Brad in Rocky Horror Picture
it's all
Show, it made me think of
behind a
that as
sheet,
well.
done in
Silhouette.
silhouette kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not to be confused with the song Silhouette from Teen Wolf
No, not at all. Of course not.
during the 7 Minutes in Heaven sequence.
I mean, they could have gone more explicit with this movie, I suppose, if they wanted to.
I think they did it intentionally
Yeah.
because by doing it the way they did it, they could keep a PG rating, make it more accessible.
Yeah,
I mean, clearly we know what they're going for without having to be gratuitous with it.
I mean, you could dissect that in a lot of the other musicals at that time too. Everything had another meaning to it.
Mhm.
It was, I mean, well, the other thing about like Can't Stop the Music is it's got some overt musical numbers as well, and it's PG, But the funniest thing about that movie is how they're purporting the village people aren't gay. Like the whole sequence with the construction worker and getting all
Sure.
the women, and you're like, we got it, guys. We know. We're in on the joke. Just continue.
Well, also, I mean, PG was kind of a loose rating
yeah.
at the time. I mean, wasn't Looker PG?
Yes. Yeah.
And it
Nudity.
had full frontal nudity in it. I mean, and that was 81, I think. Wasn't too long after this. 81,
you're
82,
right.
somewhere
Suzanne
in there.
Day. Yeah. Albert Finney. There you go, Katie. You love Wolfen. Check out Looker. Did either of you catch when Joss Ackland shows up as Mr. Tops? He says it, and it's such a throwaway line, and I think it's deliberate, like he didn't want to get into it, but he doesn't give it the gravitas that an actor before him would have done. He says, "They call me Mr. Tops."
Does the little side-eye thing?
Yeah, like, you're no Poitier on this. Come on, man.
No.
But I kind of wish that he had. They call me Mr. Tops.
I liked his delivery on that, actually. It was sort of just low-key enough to work. He does the little kind of side-eye toward nobody in particular, really, after he says the line.
Yeah.
It was nice.
I feel like he was probably embarrassed to say it, but He's like, is this really in the script?
I also like how the whole film you've never once heard of Mr. Tops, and then the guy's like,
it comes out of nowhere.
Mr. Tops is showing up.
Well, evidently
Well,
he's in the
evidently there was
prologue.
supposed to be an opening
Yeah.
scene. Yeah.
I get what you're saying though, because they're walking out of the cave and Alfie says maybe he'll finally come, and BB has no idea what he's talking about, and they have a 3-year-old together.
I mean, none of us knew what he was talking about.
no one's mentioned this before?
Right.
Really?
Well, like Nathan said, there was supposed to be a prologue between him and Mr. Boogaloo.
They say
Boogaloo
both
shrimp.
things. They say Boogaloo and Boogaloo both alternatively in the movie.
But
so.
yeah, it was supposed to have like elephants and dinosaurs and stuff. And he gets thrown in a stream. I just read about it on
Gosh,
IMDb.
I cannot imagine why they didn't include that.
Well, it's supposed to be like referential to the creation. Like that's how heavy-handed the religious stuff was supposed to be. But also somehow oddly subtle because they don't mention religion in the whole movie, but you're supposed to take it as a religious film.
It's metaphorical.
Not religious film, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
Well, most people, when they see it for the first time, get to the end of it and think, oh my God, I've been watching a religious film this whole time and didn't know it. They really are.
But what
that
was really
subtle about it.
interesting is my roommate was like, is the end supposed to be the rapture?
Yeah.
Because all of the
kinda.
people who have reformed leave with him.
Mm.
Because you see Pandy leave with them as well, saying, hey, I was corrupted, but now I'm turning good. So is that end bit supposed to be the rapture and everyone leaving?
Sure.
I would say so, but I didn't see Mimi Rogers anywhere within that group. So I'm not certain. Which, by the way, that group of followers is a cross between Hair and the Hair Bear Bunch.
Yes.
Hair Bear.
They're very...
sort of like the cast that shows up when they first present the apple is a cross between the cast of Island of Dr. Moreau and a community theater production of The Wolfman.
Right.
Kind of a thing. Yeah.
But not the Lon Chaney Jr. version. It's the Worth Keeter version of Wolfman. Which is
Have we ever figured out
less.
who this woman who's credited as the vampire in the movie, who has no lines and is in there for about 3 seconds?
I love how
gets a
Catherine
credit
Bayer
at the
Stewart's
end.
like scared by her. Like she gives her like this look of amazement, like, oh my God, look at all that eyeliner, you know? Like
I know. The people with the pig faces? Bah.
Right.
The two guys dressed as Care Bears? Bah. Whatever.
That's
Care Bear.
totally normal.
Yeah. To be expected.
Care Bear stare?
We've had a lot of cocktails. You know, these things happen. It's all right. By the way, I rounded up a few facts about the township of Moose Jaw, where our two heroes from this movie come from.
Which they keep mispronouncing throughout the movie, right? On purpose.
Moose Jaw. In case you're wondering, it is the 4th most glamorous city in all of Saskatchewan. Population at the time of the film would have been about 30,000, as opposed to today when it's about 31,000. The residents, incidentally, prefer to call themselves Moose Javians.
Moose Javian.
Moose Javians. So if you ever meet anyone from Moose Jaw, that's how they like to be addressed. They are home to the Moose Jaw Jawbreakers, a flat track roller derby team, which I've heard is very good. And as far as I can tell, the only prominent musician to come from Moose Jaw outside of Alfie is Randy Black, the drummer for Primal Scream.
Oh, wow.
So
That's pretty cool, actually.
him and a whole bunch of hockey players, and that's about it.
Well, yeah.
What is your favorite song from this movie, Nathan? Do you have a favorite
I'm going to have
song?
to go with Futuristic Bubble Pram.
The one you made up.
I guess Coming, which
I did like that scene.
which is not to be confused with the disco number in Ferdinando Baldi's Coming At Ya.
No, we can't confuse
That's a
that,
different
no.
one. Everyone remembers that disco scene, right?
It wasn't the moment where BB has got tons of eyeliner on and a dog collar, just singing her heart out to a rainy window.
Oh.
Where's my logo? Not that one?
No,
I like the one that her and Pandy sings as
Oh, the
she's
duet?
like getting her out of the
yeah.
She gets on the train, yeah.
The songs are way more catchier than they should
Right.
be.
They are.
but the
They really
first
are.
song is so annoying, though, because none of the lyrics
It
really
is.
rhyme.
No.
And
Are you talking about like when they're performing in the opening
Yeah.
scene?
Yes.
But I think that's like supposed to show how it doesn't matter if they're good or bad. If he wants them to be number one, they're going to be number
maybe.
one.
Yeah.
Because then we're shown BB and Alfie's song, which is actually decent in
The
comparison.
crowd ain't having
But
it,
he's
though.
like, no. They were until he put the red tape in.
Yeah. It's disjointed, but it's also like it takes me a couple every time I watch the movie. I have to go, what exactly are they saying? Because I didn't know they were saying BIM initially when I first saw this.
They're
I
trying
thought they
to get a
said
chant
cue the
I
beam
am.
or something, and I'm like
Beam.
Yeah.
beam. And then
I mean, that one, yeah.
and then that it's our new way. Hey, hey, hey. BIM's the
Bim's
new way.
on the way.
BIM's on the way.
on the way.
I don't know. Every time I'll pay attention to some of the actors, you can see them lip syncing it. You're like, okay, he's got it right, and then somebody else is lip syncing it totally wrong, and I'm like, I'm lost. And there's no subtitles on the Blu-ray.
There's that one. I mean, the Apple song itself, very catchy, sticks in your head forever. The two songs Boogaloo does himself, I didn't much care for. It was kind of okay. They had to give him something to sing a couple of times in the movie. That's fine. My favorite song is Joss Ackland's rendition of Child of Love. Because it is so weird. It's very brief in the movie.
Yeah, evidently
damn,
that was longer.
he brings it.
In that alternate cut. Yeah,
Oh my god.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Joss is he's delivering the goods. He's no Joss Stone.
Okay.
He's like, all right, I'll allow
I
it.
love when Jason
nothing.
has no idea what to say.
No, I got nothing there. Well, he's right. He isn't. He is not Joss Stone in more than a few ways.
Those
This is
are
true.
facts.
These are true facts. Yeah. Katie, you said your favorite song was what now? From
The
a
duet
different movie
between Bibi
entirely?
and Pandy.
I thought you're.
No, I enjoyed this movie.
It's more fun to watch than it should be. I mean, it doesn't have that midnight movie status that Rocky Horror or even Repo Genetic Opera has. Really.
Oh, I love Repo Genetic Opera.
There's probably a group of people like Phantom of the Paradise. There's probably a town somewhere in Canada that has an annual event where they do cosplay.
Well, and I
all
feel
that.
like I watched this with somebody. I feel like it would be one of those movies that you throw on at a party while everybody's drinking and you just poke fun at it the whole time you're watching. You know what I mean? Like it's a fun group movie.
That's true.
Yeah. I think it would make, like, I've mentioned Xanadu and Can't Stop the Music. I think it would make a great triple bill with those two movies because they're all what the fuck on their own level, Xanadu being the best of the three. And I absolutely love Xanadu. I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
I've never seen it.
So much fun.
Katie, you will know music from Xanadu without ever seeing
Xanadu. I know I do already.
Yeah, Electric Light Orchestra and Olivia.
I know that there's music from it, and I know that there's most likely scenes from it that I would be...
Well, that was Don Bluth.
Just because I'm sure it's referential to other stuff as well. It's just still very bizarre to me that I hadn't heard of it. Like, even if I hadn't seen it until right now, I've never even heard this movie referenced or brought up, and I've always really liked musicals, so it's odd to me that I didn't even know of its existence.
That's why it is this little gem of a movie that you can have the absolute pleasure of finding on your own.
Thank you, Jason.
Putting it into that player and thinking, what in the hell am I watching? All the way through.
It was a day one DVD purchase for me because I was so excited it was finally, and it was going to be in widescreen, and I was like, I can finally enjoy this. And maybe that's why the movie was out of print for so long, because I would rent Paragon releases, and they would always trailer this movie on there, and it looked horrendous in the trailer because so much information visually was cut out of it. That I was like, God, that had to be a struggle to sit through.
I want to see all the star filters on the lights.
You do. I mean, it's a spectacle,
I want to see all the leather boys on motorcycles.
Or you won't see any. You see one leather boy. You don't see the other ones.
I know, right? What are you going to do?
And then you're like, I'm only seeing one vampire. I don't see other ones. And you're like, oh, and then you watch it widescreen. There is only one vampire. Yeah.
Well, with that, I think it's time to draw this episode to a close. Please, everybody, if you get a chance, see The Apple if you can get it on streaming. If you can't get the Blu-ray, it's worth it. It's not that expensive.
Yeah.
Great commentaries, great interviews. It's well worth your time.
It's the best it's ever
Throw
looked.
Throw it in the player at your next party. It's grand. And with that, thank you all for listening. We'll see you next time.
Tempted by the fruit of another, tempted but the truth is discovered. What's been going on now that you have gone? There's no other.
Well, that was certainly interesting. We learned a lot about hippies, but almost nothing about apples, apple pie, or even apple cider. Maybe next time, my friends. For now anyway, the Smooth Thrills Radio Hour is a production of Ghostcraft and is recorded live in Dallas, Texas, home to an absurd number of actual vampires. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Affection, tell me what is there to do? Tempted by the fruit of another, tempted but the truth is discovered.
This has been a Ghostcraft presentation.